All right, so it's 2 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get started. We might have some more people coming in, but it looks like right now we have about 24 participants on this Zoom call, so that's a great amount. So welcome everybody. First off, I want to introduce myself. My name is Jamie Baker. I am a broadband solutions manager here with Connected Nation, Texas, and it's great to be a part of everyone. I'm going to be kind of your point person here in Jones County as we go through the survey and the collection of data, and then of course presenting that data and presenting a technology plan. With us today, I have two of my colleagues from Connected Nation. One is Wes Kerr. He is joined us. He is our Director of Community Solutions. And then the other one is Jennifer Harris. She is our State Program Director here at Connected Nations Texas. And both of them will be sharing some updates and giving some information along with this presentation. I want everyone to know that this presentation probably will go around 40 to 45 minutes. We've got a lot of information to share and a lot of information to give. So if you don't mind, we do have a section of questions at the end, but if something's sticking out and you're like, hey, I'm not understanding what you're saying, please let us know. There's sections in Zoom where you can raise a hand. I think everybody is muted right now. That's just to keep the background noise low, but if you want to mute yourself and just say, hey, got a question real quick, more than happy to answer those. Very interactive process we're doing here in Zoom. So with that, I believe everybody can see my slide right now. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. First, a little bit about Connected Nations. Our mission is to improve the lives by providing innovative solutions that expands the access, adoption, and use of high-speed internet and its related technologies to all people. Essentially, everyone belongs to in a connected nation. If you can see on our left-hand side, we are celebrating 20 years of service, and that it's only going to grow from there. Connected Nation Texas, I believe, got started a couple of years ago, and so even though there's a presence across the nation, we're really getting a deep dive here in Texas, thanks in part to the Texas Rural Collaborative Funds that's helping out counties like yourself paying for our services with the mapping and the survey to get an accurate description of where your broadband needs are in Jones County. So, you know, Connected Nation Texas is a subsidiary of Connected Nations, the national nonprofit. Some of the services that we provide here, as you can see, we do network mapping, validation, and analysis. And that's where we're at right now. We're going to talk about the survey and how that's going to pay into your network mapping and the analysis of what you have in Jones County. We also do residential and business technology research, local, state, and national policy analysis, and of course, community technology planning. And this is so key and so critical because each one of y'all play an important role just by being here, getting this information. But we need y'all as our community champions to go out into the community and say, this is why this is important. When we talk about having, you know, high-speed internet and its technologies for everyone, we need y'all as community advocates to go out there and say, this is why the survey is important. This is why being a part of this is important. This is why we need leaders in our communities to really sell this. And I have to just say, one of your biggest champions, and I've been on the job for you know, a couple of days, about 2 weeks now, but one of your biggest champions in Jones County working with us and Connected Nations to make sure that we get an accurate broadband mapping is, of course, your county judge, Judge Adele Spurgeon. So I just want to pass it off to Judge Spurgeon real quick if he wants to say a couple of words about what we're doing here and the importance in Jones County. So Judge, if you'd like to say some words, love to have you.
Thank you, Jamie. And again, we want to express our appreciation to your group that is assisting with us. And we've got a great team of people here that represent lots of categories. And I really look forward to seeing the information that we can glean and put together. I think broadband internet has got a lot of momentum, particularly for rural areas of the nation. Both the state and the federal partners are on board on trying to push this out. And so we didn't want to miss this opportunity and look forward to working with you. And again, I just want to express our appreciation for everyone's willingness to cooperate and participate. There's a lot of enthusiasm when we've had conversations about this issue. So we want to take advantage of the momentum. So thanks a lot, Jamie.
Excellent, Judge. Thank you so much. And what a segue on that is that I want to introduce our state program director, Jennifer Harris. Jennifer is a leader in our state and of course the broadband community in general, and want to give her the opportunity to talk about what she's doing and introduce herself to the group. So Jennifer.
Thanks so much, Jamie. I appreciate the introduction. I'm excited to see such a big group here today. This is really exciting. I'll start by saying that I just got approval pending that I will be, eligible for vaccination starting Monday, according to the announcement. Pending that all comes through, I'm coming out your way to visit in mid-May. So I'm really, really excited that I'm actually going to be able to head your way and be safe about it when I do that. That I think might be my first visit anywhere in over a year. So I'm pretty excited about it, that it will be to your community. Wanted to start and just say, a lot is going on in Texas right now with the Texas legislature and in my role on the Governor's Broadband Development Council. So this council was created by the previous legislature that really kickstarted a lot of the broadband conversation going on at the state capitol. This council, we were appointed in January of 2020. So right before the pandemic started, we didn't even know what the future was going to hold, but definitely the council started getting a lot more attention as soon as the pandemic started, and we were all told to use broadband all the time. And then some of us, of course, don't have broadband. So how exactly does that work? I used to say when I talked about the council that we have not met, that it's been a virtual. Oh, I'm hearing feedback. Can everyone make sure we're on mute? Okay, I think that's working better. Nope. Is that better? No more feedback?
Yeah, I think we got everybody.
Okay, great. So I was used to saying, we're a Governor's Broadband Council that's never met in person, and we'd only met using broadband. But fortunately enough, last week, the chairman of the council, Bill Spruill, and I happened to be at the Capitol testifying on House Bill 5 and Senate Bill 5, which I'll share about in just a second. And so he and I were able to sneak over to a very large and very empty conference room in the governor's economic development office and technically hold the first in-person meeting of the Governor's Broadband Development Council. And so that was pretty exciting. Everybody else joined us virtually. I'm hoping that we start to get to a point that we can have more members meet, because we had never met each other. It's harder to work as a group, but I'm really excited about what the future holds for this council and what we're going to be able to help the state with. Our recommendations that we made in November of last year to the legislature, the governor's office, and the lieutenant governor were to create a statewide broadband plan, a state broadband office, and then really look into a state grant funding program or some other type of funding program for high cost infrastructure in our unserved areas. Those recommendations have been directly reflected in both House Bill 5 and Senate Bill 5, which are priority legislative items for the House and the Senate. Obviously, broadband was made an emergency item by Governor Abbott, and then given those number 5 numbers by the House and the Senate to really designate their priority as well. And the Senate Transportation Committee held the first hearing on broadband last Wednesday. And I know you're probably asking why the Senate Transportation Committee. Broadband wouldn't typically go to the Senate Transportation Committee. But in case y'all forgot, a few weeks ago, we had this energy situation. None of us had power at our homes, some of us for multiple days at a time. And so it appears that the Senate has decided to let the Business and Commerce Committee that would typically also oversee broadband issues really focus on electricity and energy issues. And as Senator Robert Nichols is a leader on broadband in the Senate and the author of SB 5, they have moved broadband over to the Transportation Committee. So sounds weird, but it's a great group of senators. They're going to be working on broadband. That hearing went really well. There was no opposition to the bill. The following morning, House State Affairs heard HB 5, which is the House version of that same bill. Once again, no opposition. So really, really exciting there. There's probably about 50 bills in total filed on broadband, some of them education related, some of them telehealth related, some of them even middle mile related, talking more about that infrastructure piece. So a lot going on, and I just want to make myself available as a resource to y'all. Anytime you have a question on what's going on at the legislature, please let me know. I'm here to answer those questions and help guide you if you need to chat with anyone. I do believe I'm checking to see who's joined. I believe Robin has joined from Representative Stan Lambert's office. So we thank you for being here today, Robin, and representing your boss on this call and his work on broadband this legislative session. I think that's all I've got, Jamie.
Excellent. Sorry, I had to find the unmute button for me. So no, thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate your leadership on this. The entire state of Texas appreciates that. With your help, we will proceed forward with Jones County. So thank you for that. The next person I want to introduce, of course, is Wes Kerr, our Director of Community Solutions. And Wes is a wealth of knowledge with Connected Nations. I believe he has been a part of Connected Nation all the way for like 10, 15 years, if I'm not mistaken. And I invited him here because I wanted him to talk about why we're talking about broadband, why we're talking about these rural areas, what's important, and what we're going to look for after we complete your survey. So I'm going to turn it over to Wes real quick and let him talk.
Thank you, Jamie. Let you get that slide flipped over here. I think, if I remember correctly, yeah, I was going to say I'll get started, but I'd hate to start on the wrong slide. So broadband, why is it important? Everybody's got a story as it relates to broadband service, in some instances, the lack thereof. But we want to look at broadband in a couple different ways. It used to be, as Jamie alluded to, I've been working in this space for around 15 years, a little over 15 years. 10 years ago, we were solely focused on just technology. We have to get service to a community. But in the past decade, we've seen such an increase in the need for various different speed levels and speed tiers. And so one of the things that we want to talk about, make sure that we talk about, is not just the technology, but also the speed. And so we'll start with the speed side of it today. We have on here 10 megabit per second, 25 megabit per second, and 1 gigabit per second speeds. And really this chart just kind of gives us an idea of what those individual speed tiers allow us to do. At 10 megabit per second, we can support 1 or 2 devices. If you step up, as you step up in speed tiers, it'll support more devices in your home. I think I imagine by the time we complete the Jones County survey work, we'll have the average number of devices in a household in our communities will have gone up even more than where they're at right now. But I want to say that the number is somewhere around 16 devices per household is what an average household in one of Connected Nations one of our communities, it sits at right now. And I imagine if you start thinking through it, you start thinking about your mobile devices and TVs and laptops and so on and so forth, and that number adds up pretty quickly. And anymore, it's almost the kitchen sink. In fact, there are water sensors that you put under the kitchen sink. So in fact, it could very well be the kitchen sink, the number of devices that you have. The types of activities that these support at 10 megabit per second, it's good for doing your general, online activities, email, some HD streaming, probably a single stream, potentially 2, maybe a child doing a little bit of gaming, certainly some of your schoolwork. But when you have multiple children or multiple individuals in a home, utilizing multiple devices at a time, the strain really begins to be apparent on the network as far as that throughput. And so that's why you hear a lot of conversation about pushing speeds forward. The current FCC definition is 25 megabit per second download with 3 megabit per second upload. And so that kind of gives you, that's why it's the middle ground on here. Certainly in a lot of rural areas, we have speeds that are below that 10 megabit per second as technologies that were deployed a decade ago or even longer for that matter We're commonly in the 1.5 megabit per second to 6 megabit per second speeds. So that kind of gives you an idea around the speed side, which is one half of the equation. Jamie, I'll have you flip over to that next slide. And then real quickly, we'll talk about the technologies that are out there. And we'll start over kind of in the left-hand corner of your screen there with mobile broadband. And we look at mobile broadband separate from these other technologies in that we find it to be complementary to your home broadband connection. Certainly, there are individuals in rural America who are utilizing a mobile broadband connection as their primary broadband connection. We don't think that's really what is ideal. We think, again, that those two technologies are complementary. And so mobile broadband is going to be your mobile device, maybe a hotspot that you're using, your iPhone, your Android, however you want to call that device. But that's kind of the focus with mobile broadband. And there's certainly a lot of changes happening right now in the mobile broadband space. You can't turn a TV on hardly without seeing a commercial for 5G technology. 5G is being deployed for mobile broadband primarily, but 5G is just a technology. It doesn't necessarily say, it doesn't guarantee a particular speed or a particular distance. It's just a technology stack that all the different carriers are utilizing moving forward as we build out new networks, and it will be used for in lots of different ways. So there are some ultra high speed networks out there. There are some networks that reach much further, but don't have nearly as high speeds. But certainly they fall in the mobile broadband, and there will be a few fixed wireless providers who are starting to move towards utilizing the technology itself, 5G. But again, they'll be kind of point to point, and that moves us to fixed wireless. Fixed wireless utilizes a transmit site. In this example, we're using a water tower, but it could be a water tower, a standard telecom tower, a standpipe water kind of infrastructure. Could be the tops of a tall building, grain legs, lots of different vertical assets is what we would call them. And that's a fixed location transmit out to a receive, so at your home or your business. We'll drop down and look at cable. Cable is more prevalent in our more urban areas, particularly in our rural communities. It's going to be in your towns typically within city limits, maybe in neighborhoods, larger neighborhoods that are scattered about. DSL is digital subscriber line. This is the broadband technology that has been deployed through our telephone companies over the past decade and a half. So it's very prevalent in rural areas around the country. Again, the speeds there kind of range and vary, but at this point, that technology itself is not having as much development, and so we aren't seeing quite as high speeds as some of the other technologies moving forward. And then fiber is kind of the buzzword buzz topic, if you will, of broadband conversations. It's essentially a piece of glass that transmits light, and that light is then encoded and decoded for broadband services. It's a very popular technology. It's been easier to deploy in more urban settings because of the cost associated with it. And so having a higher density of customers or likely customers has been a little bit easier for deployment. But we're certainly seeing a lot more rural fiber being deployed. And then last but not least is satellite. And I'll stop briefly at satellite simply to say many of you have probably driven down the road and pulled up at an intersection in your community and seen a sign that talks about internet for $19.99 or high-speed internet or whatever it may be. And oftentimes that's a satellite company, and these companies are providing services in areas oftentimes where nobody else is able to do that. That said, the older technology satellite certainly has plenty of limitations, primarily because of physics. It takes a long time to get a signal 20,000+ miles in the air and back. All that said, if you've picked up a newspaper and thumbed through or turned the news on, Elon Musk has moved to Texas. Starlink is his satellite internet company, and they're currently in a pilot phase with their technology. They continue to launch satellites on a periodic basis. And at this point, we don't really know what the outcome will be of that network. Although early on, it seems like we're seeing good throughput and good, essentially a good response from those who are in the pilot program. And so maybe, hopefully, that will be an option in your community, particularly in areas where some of these other technologies may not fit in the future. Yeah, and real quickly, this is a broadband map for the county. You'll notice that there are a couple of different colors here. One is kind of a lighter green and the other is a darker shade of green. And what these areas, those two shades represent 10 megabit per second download by 1 megabit per second upload speeds. And so the lighter green areas are areas where Connected Nation Texas, our team who gathered data, ended up having to utilize FCC broadband, or FCC's 477 data submission. And so you'll see that denoted on the map as FCC service availability. Those darker green areas are areas where our team was able to work directly with the broadband provider to gather the information. So it was submitted directly by the provider back to Connected Nation Texas for the use of this map, actually. And so those darker green areas are typically areas where we have a higher level of confidence in the data that's been supplied. And typically it's a more granular data, whereas the FCC service availability data is representative at the census block level. Typically, these areas provided by providers, and you again denoted in here as detailed service area, are areas where we worked with that provider to refine the coverage area into something that's essentially more granular than a census block. These maps are available on the Connected Nation Texas website, and so I'd encourage you to take a few minutes to go over and look there. And certainly as we gather survey information and work with the community, particularly for any provider that may be on, we're always interested in your feedback. And if there are changes or things that, information or data that's not represented here and you'd like to have that represented, certainly let us know and we'll work with you to make that happen.
Thank you, Wes. I appreciate your explanation of broadband and our survey, the survey maps that are currently with Jones County, and is sharing your knowledge. And we'll hear from Wes a little bit later, but for now you get me. So let's talk about the core components of connectivity. First is access, and that is on all the people who went to economics. That's the supply side. So the physical connection to high-speed internet. How many people? How many farms? How many businesses? What does schools have? What is the physical connection in these areas to high-speed internet? And as Wes alluded to, the FCC's definition of high-speed internet is 25 megabytes per second download, 3 upload. But a lot of times in rural areas, it's 10-1. And so we're trying to get all that information access, and that's part of the survey. On the demand side, we have two components. One, we have the adoption, recognizing the value of broadband and subscribing either at home, work, or via public institutions. So knowing that there is a need for this. And I like to attribute this to the evolution of technology. Where we were 10 years ago is not where we are now. 10 years ago, we would have DirecTV or Dish Network, or sometimes if you go back into my family's days, we had the huge satellites out there that always turn compared to a particular channel you're looking at. Nowadays, we're doing stream-based technology, whether it's with Apple TV, your Roku, your Amazon Fire Sticks. And so as technology has evolved, the adoption of these technologies and the need for the internet to supply those technologies have greatly impacted as well. And the other part is the use, skills and applications to leverage technology to improve home quality of life, community, and economic development. Part of what I just talked to is on the use part, but another part is our small businesses. In our first connected community in Rains County, one of the biggest issues with our businesses was that they want to adopt mobile platforms in order to do point of sales. So they felt that it would entice more customers to come to their locations, whether it be e-commerce or regular brick and mortar. And because they didn't have the infrastructure, they had the technology, because they didn't have the business infrastructure, they felt that they lost out on potential opportunities. So, the use of this, especially after the pandemic, and how, say, county governments use technology. I'll give you an example. In my previous job, I worked right next door to the county judge of Grayson County. And when the pandemic happened, he did probate, and he couldn't have people come into his office anymore to conduct probate. So he was going on to Zoom and conducting probate court through Zoom. So, situations and especially with the pandemic, kids learning, doing remote learning has really impacted the use and need of broadband. So those are what we're talking about when we talk on the core components of connectivity. Let me go to the other slide. So why does broadband matter? Well, depending upon what industry, what your profession is, what you do at home, broadband can make a significant impact. For instance, if you can look over here on the left-hand side, with the house, it says having broadband provides households with an estimated $1,800 annual economic benefits. In communities of 20,000, home-based businesses and online sales can account for $2.4 million annually. I can speak to that because my family, we have a family-owned business, and our ability to conduct businesses not only here in East Texas, but we use businesses in Houston and in Alice State. If we didn't have the broadband technology in order to do that, we would be losing out on possible revenue and opportunities. And that goes with all these different sectors. For instance, hospital, telemedicine. Telemedicine is becoming really strong in these rural areas on how to deliver care. My insurance now takes telemedicine instead of having me go into the nearest town, which is about 30 minutes away. So if I didn't have the connectivity to get that, I would be missing out on that. So I don't want to go through every one of these, but you can see that broadband impacts each one of these industries and each one of these sectors. And we'll talk a little bit more about these sectors when we get into the survey. So what is the connected engagement? First of all, we're at the very top. We're in the red little box where it says the community broadband team. That is what all of y'all here today are a part of. You're a part of your community broadband team. Now, I can send out emails and I can get people here, but it really matters when, say your mayor, your superintendent, your teacher, your community leaders go out and say, hey, I want you to be involved in this because it's not only going to benefit the community in general, it's really going to benefit you as well. So congratulations, you are all part of the Jones County Community Broadband Team. The next step that we're going to talk about is the Broadband Assessment, and that's when we talk about the survey. We don't know really what the needs of Jones County is without y'all participating and y'all telling us. So as Wes alluded to, there are some data that we can get either from providers or that we can get from the Federal Communications Commission. But I worked on telecom policy in Congress for a member of Congress for about 4 years. I've had meetings over at the Federal Communications Commission, and I can tell you, they would come up, bring me a map, and say, no, your county has complete coverage and availability. And I come back to them and say, I have been to this county, and I am telling you 100% that your map is wrong. And even recently, the acting chair of the FCC even alluded to that, saying that, look, we got to do a better job at mapping, knowing what the needs are in those communities, knowing where we are strong and knowing where we have opportunities. And that's where you come in. And that's where you play a critical role. You filling out these surveys and helping us get an accurate description of what the needs are in Jones County through the broadband assessment is going to help us create your broadband action plan and help us help you get adequate and more broadband in specific areas. That's where the third part comes in, the broadband action planning. So after we take all the surveys that we have collected through Jones County, our team will go through, our research and development team will go through analyze the survey results, and then come back and say, okay, these are where we're strong in, these are where the opportunities are, this is where, you know, the survey shows that the speed is really lacking, this is where it shows that it's really strong. And we're going to talk about that with Wes a little bit later, so I don't want to spend too much time on that. And then the fourth part is the project implementation. Any type of opportunities, whether it's through your providers, whether it's through grants, through the government, whether it's state or federal, they all need the information to showcase the need. It's one thing to say, hey, we have a need. It's another thing to show the data that corresponds with that. And that's what we're working on today. We're working on crafting that data, creating an action plan, and so that you can go out there and implement it so that we can get broadband out in your communities. So what is the community broadband team? We hope that today you represent multiple different sectors of Jones County. That includes local government, our education institutions, agriculture, healthcare, public safety, libraries, community organization, broadband providers, economic development, businesses. Everyone together creates the community broadband team. We are all working on the same goal, to expand adequate broadband in Jones County. So I think last time I saw that we had almost 30 or 31 participants today. So I'm pretty confident that we have a very diverse community broadband team representing multiple sectors today. And thank you again for joining us. So let's go to what the broadband survey homepage is like. If you go to myconnectedcommunity.org/Jones County, this is what it's going to show up. It's going to say Jones County at the very top, and it's going to say, hey, here's your household, business, health, higher education, library organization, government, public safety. And you're going to go in and you can click on one of these as it is relevant to what you're representing. And the surveys are very, very easy. They take maybe 5 to 10 minutes. So it's not a lot of time out of your schedule, but it's really important that you represent the area. You know, if you're a small business, putting in business, if you're on a farm, if you're in agriculture, even if you do Future Farmers of America, those are in the agriculture sector. And each sector is different and unique, even though you can do it in your own household. So I'll give you another example. Where I am located right now in Harrison County is one of our connected communities. We actually here fill out the survey 3 times. One as household, one as a business, and because we're on a ranch, one as an agriculture. But you know, the thing is that we do for those 3 different sectors, we do 3 different things. Under our household, when we're answering questions, we're answering it as, what do we have in our house? How do we stream technology? What about our security systems? Do you have an Amazon Alexa? Do you have any smart devices like your phones or anything? So we're looking at it from that perspective. When we're looking at it from business, what I'm doing right now, I'm on a Zoom call through my job with all of y'all. So the need, you know, that will take a higher level of broadband than say asking Alexa, what time is it? So even though it's the same location, it's a different need. And then when we go into agriculture, as I talked about earlier, the technology evolution in all these different sectors is continually evolving. And so in agriculture, one thing that we do, we do cattle, and we have trees, we do forestry. And so we will deploy drone technology in order over our ranch to see where, you know, how our trees are doing. How's the cattle doing? That takes internet and that takes broadband, of course, to get that data, especially when we're talking about video. So 3 different needs, 1 location. And that's what I want everyone to think about today, is that you might say, okay, I'm going to go home and I'm going to do this survey, but you know, you're the county judge, your needs in the government are different than your residential needs. But you also say you're participating in a community organization like Rotary. So what are the 3 different needs? You can fill out the survey in 3 different locations based upon what you do and how it fits into this area. So I want you all to think about that as we're moving forward. So this is what this slide is about survey outreach. Now, what our team has come together, and we've taken your information, whether it's how many residents in the county, the amount of farms and ranches that's on your census information, businesses, government, healthcare, higher ed, K through 12, libraries and community organization, public safety. And then we put together a target goal of these. Now, I want to be very, very clear. These are targets. We would love for you to go further than, if you have 550 residential surveys, that's great. That's our target. Think of that as the minimum threshold. If you can get 600 or 650, all that's doing is sharing more data with us so that we can give y'all an accurate assessment as to the needs of Jones County. So while we say, hey, we want 35 agriculture entities, be that your farm, your ranches, your county extension office, your farms, your cotton, I believe we have cotton producing in Jones County as well. But we want 35, we can always want more, because the more data that we have, the better opportunity we can provide you with more accurate representation of Jones County. So your surveys are compiled by serviceable addresses, your home address, your office, your location that you produce your community organizations. As I just talked about my own situation, one address can complete multiple surveys, but only in unique segments, okay? So for instance, my fiance and I should not fill out the same survey at the same location. That's for residential. Kind of defeats the purpose, because we already have what the residential sector of this address. And like I said, if you represent different sectors, please make sure to fill out in each of those sectors. If an organization has multiple locations, each facility should complete their own survey. So if you say the gas station attendants, you have 5 gas stations and they're all owned by the same person, each one of those 5 locations, even though they're all owned by one person, each of those 5 locations should fill this out. So here's some tips and tricks. Now I'm going to go through what we say, and then I'm going to give you a perspective from myself, because I've actually been in your shoes. I was a community leader for Rains County. Residential and households. You can print out. We have a PDF that we've already sent out to your community leaders, kind of explaining why we're doing this. Print them out, distribute them through the schools, library, churches, community organizations, etc. Agriculture, you're representing your timber, mining, fruit, livestock. I mean, this does not necessarily represent everything in Jones County. This is kind of what we'd see for every county as a generalization. In your businesses, chamber, rotary, EDCs, governments, thinks of your city, county, state and federal officials in those offices, hospitals for healthcare, clinics, practices. So if you have a local doctor, a local dentist, those practices, nursing homes, rehab facilities, assisted living, mental health, higher education. We don't have a target for higher education. I don't believe Jones County has a higher education institution in it, but K through 12, think of your elementary schools, your junior highs, your high schools, your school districts. Administrative offices, because sometimes they're not located on the same campus as your high schools, elementary or junior highs. Library and community organizations, your Goodwills, Red Crosses, again, libraries, Veterans of Foreign Wars, Masonic lodges. These are things that we look for in libraries and community orgs. And then finally, public safety. Police, sheriff, fire, EMS, 911. We have 12 for y'all in public safety. I can think of 5 elected officials that are under public safety that can do both government and public safety, your sheriff and your 4 constables. You can think of your city police, your fire chief, or even just firemen at a local station. So those are what we want you to think with that. Now, as I said earlier, in my previous life, I was the director of public policy for a congressman from Northeast Texas. In Rains County, which was our first connected community in Texas, I was a part of that community outreach and community leadership group. And I can tell you, you're going to get a lot of surveys by word of mouth, and you're going to get a lot of surveys, especially leaving here, and everybody's going to be, all right, I can't wait to get out there. I'm going to have people, I'm going to send this out, and momentum is very key. There will be probably some times that you have a little bit of a slowdown, and that, in my opinion, is where, again, you seek out those one-on-one opportunities with people. You explain the need for this. If you go to anyone and say, hey, do you want better broadband? Everybody's probably going to say yes. No one's going to say, no, I don't want better broadband. I'm cool where I am. Everybody's going to say yes. And so explaining the needs, explain the why for these areas and how it benefits not only them, but a community at large is really going to help. That's how we got Rains County at 100% at all of our different sectors, is because we would seek out individual people and say, hey, have you heard about this? Because a lot of times people skim over like an email or a Facebook post or any type of social media. So that's where we're really going to need our community leaders like y'all to go out and say, and look at the survey results that come out every week and say, okay, I see we're kind of lacking here on agriculture. Hey, let's go talk to our county extension office and say, where do you think we're missing on this? Who can we talk to? So those are going to be examples that we can talk about later on as we progress through the survey. But that's just my personal experience that has worked better. I quite literally had a handout and went around the town square and the different businesses and started talking to people. And that's how we got Rains County some good survey information. Moving on to the next one. So let's get started on this. So already today, Connected Nations has issued a press release encouraging residents, businesses, and organizations to participate. All broadband committee members, and that's y'all, should take the survey themselves as a household and as a representative of their sector or an organization. Help drive the survey participation by sharing the link through your organizations via meetings, emails, social media, etc., just like what we just talked about. Connected Nations Texas will continue to promote broadband surveys via Facebook, Twitter, blog posts, and we will track the issue survey and a status report on a weekly basis. And I will send that out to our community leaders, not necessarily the group at large. I can certainly do that if that's what the group wants, but our community leaders, for instance, the judge, Mayor Decker, the superintendent, some of the people that really got this going, got about 5 of them. That's who we're going to share the results with, unless y'all would like to hear from me, and I'm more than happy to share that with y'all. All right, so on the right-hand side, all of our core community members have this PDF, and it's a one-page PDF. It says who's involved, what is being done, when will this take place, how can you help, and then the link with the survey. Now, if you print this off and send it, of course, people are not going to be able to click on the survey link, but you will have at least the URL that you can that those people can manually put. What I would suggest is using this one pager that we put together that the judge has, Mayor Decker has, that we can that you can send out through an email. ATY, I see your hand raised, so let me go ahead and ask you to unmute, and let me answer your question for you.
Is there any way you can put a QR code on there?
Sure. I'm sure we can get that taken care of. And
well, that way you wouldn't have the clicking problem.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea, and I'm sure that we can get that done, and we can get that back to y'all. So thank you for the suggestion, and we will get to work on that. All right. Let's see. So some other things with this Connected Nations handout to promote the survey: press release, local press, media, blog posts, news articles, your distribution list that you're part of, social media, conducting meetings, conducting Zoom calls, doing mailings, any type of signage. I will tell you, if you have any questions and you would like me to participate and answer any questions with people that have on this, I'm more than happy to jump on a Zoom or jump on the phone, or I would jump in the car, but I'm a little far away from y'all. But anything that I can do to help y'all, that's my job. My job is to help y'all meet your targets, meet your sectors, and whatever we can do to do that, we're going to do. So let's talk about the timeline. We're launching today, so the link is active. In fact, we've had some people already fill out the survey, and that will last from today to about June. Typically, we'll do 8 to 10 weeks, and so that does put us in the June timeline, but it's the 1st of June. So as we're getting closer to that deadline, we will see where we're strong in the sectors. If we just blow everything out of the water early, we might say, hey, you know, we've already not only, you know, met our sector deadlines, but we've surpassed them by doubling them. Do we need to have this, you know, continue on till June? So that's the things that, you know, we will talk as a community and as a broadband community team. But just so y'all know, we have about 8 to 10 weeks in order to get the survey done. In June through July, that's when we're going to do data analysis and assessment. That's where our research and development team comes in and, you know, plots maps out and say, these are the strongest routes, these are not so strong areas. And then in August and September, we'll have an action plan development. And that's where we'll come back together. And hopefully by August and September, we'll be able to do this in person with us coming out to Jones County. Just in case it's not, we will, of course, you know, default back to Zoom. But that's when we will present the results and present the next steps going forward. So I want to go a little bit about expectations and outcomes, okay? What we're trying to do is to develop a more in-depth understanding of the broadband availability in your area, your region, and get the most current and reliable data. We're going to identify and prioritize specific areas of the county in need of new or improved broadband services. So this is like your unserved or underserved areas. We're going to develop a tailored and targeted broadband action plan based on the assessments from the survey and Connected Texas recommendations to address these needs. Again, this is why I always emphasize how important this survey is, because without accurate assessment findings, we cannot help you move on to the next steps in this process. We're going to position the region to take a timely advantage of funding opportunities and other resources to execute the action plan. As you heard earlier from Jennifer, the state of Texas governor has declared broadband as an emergency item. There is legislation that is going through the Texas Capitol as we speak, placing the emphasis on what we're going to do in order to expand broadband, especially in these rural areas. From the federal perspective, I can tell you that there has been a lot of legislation and a lot of appropriations, meaning funding, that has come out specifically for broadband deployment in rural development at USDA. So again, this is where I kind of alluded to earlier. If we don't have the data and we don't have a plan, we can't send y'all, to get those, to take advantage of those funding opportunities to expand broadband. So everything is connected, and there's a reason that we do everything. And then, of course, establish an ongoing broadband focus and planning process for your community. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn this back over to Wes, and he's going to talk about, after the survey, what the plan looks like and what the findings are. So Wes, take it away.
Sure, thank you, Jamie. And I won't take a lot of time here, but I think it's important that we begin to understand what happens when we get these survey results back, and our team takes them and goes through analysis and deduplicates the data and cleans it up and all those kinds of things. And that's that kind of interim time frame. I think we had a July, August kind of time frame in there that Jamie was showing us a minute ago. And that's really what's happening. Our research team is taking that information and making sure that it's represented accurately. And so starting again up here in this left-hand corner, this is Bastrop County. We just completed this process, and we're kind of in the final stages of that process there. But you'll notice that on this map, I think what we're seeing here are blue and red dots there in the county, and those are those who have a home broadband connection are in blue, and those who do not are in red. And so you begin to understand a distribution of where those folks are at. Sometimes that's sometimes I caution that sometimes this is a perception issue, because oftentimes there are services available that someone doesn't know about. And so while it's important for us to understand that that's what a potential customer or a resident of the county believes, it's also important that providers can look at that and go, I have service there. And sometimes it's a matter of maybe we need to do more promotion of the services that are available, or so on and so forth. But if not, it helps to begin drive where this idea of a more prescriptive broadband deployment might become important. If we jump there to the right-hand side of the screen, this actually shows the responses of what type of service a respondent to the survey said that they have. And so in this view, it's pretty easy to see quite a bit of red on the screen, and that's representative of cable. There's quite a bit of DSL on here. There are a lot of green dots on there, and those are fixed wireless locations. And so again, it begins to help you understand what types of services are in the community and how they're distributed throughout the community. Very quickly, this idea of barriers to broadband adoption, this gives us an idea of why those who are not subscribing aren't. And so notice here, we try to provide comparisons for all connected communities with your community, so that you have an idea of kind of how that compares. Is this normal? And so I think in this one, we're looking at the responses were the primary response being that internet service is not available at their address. And so again, it provides us more and more information about the areas and what needs to be done. Second to that, I believe, was internet services is too expensive. And again, that begins to help us understand on the adoption and use side, are there other things that we need to be focused on? I'll go back to that picture that slide that Jamie had a few moments ago that had access, adoption, and use. Sometimes if we can work on that adoption and use side, it changes the equation for access. And so having a true understanding of what's happening on the ground is really important as we try to build out and expand services within the community. And then, I was going to say, just there in that bottom corner, we don't even have to jump back, Jamie. It was just, why does your internet connection not meet your needs? And you can see, oftentimes people say it's too slow or it's priced too high. Customer service is poor. We hear that pretty often as well. So, Jamie, if you want to flip over. As we get towards the end of this whole process, so when we're talking about that July, August, September timeframe, we'll have an entire listing of recommendations, and you all will have input on that. We'll come back and say, hey, here, based on the data and what we see, these are the things we think would be good for you to be focused on. But this team collectively will be able to say, these are the things we want to make a priority. And ultimately, and this is just an example of kind of what that looks like, and this has become a digital ready community, which is something that we're recommending in lots of communities. But ultimately, we'll work with you to say, okay, who in our community is going to take charge of this? Who's going to be responsible for helping move us forward? And we'll help you get started in those first steps of this part of the process.
All right. Thank you so much, Wes. I really appreciate your information there as well. So as we're starting to come to the end of our presentation, I want to share some resources and links with y'all. First of all, the county broadband survey. So this is how you find, not only for Jones County, but any county, but when say go and do a community survey for another county that's not yours, but you put in myconnectedcommunity.org /Texas and Jones County. It'll pop up. And then under county and state broadband coverage maps and interactive broadband maps, that's what Wes was talking about earlier on Jones County, the light green and the dark green. That is this website right here, connectednation.org /Texas/mapping and analysis. In fact, if you just go to the Connected Nation Texas website, you can find it under the mapping section. I think it's on the first little tab going down, and that website is next, connectednation.org /Texas. And then of course like our page on Facebook. There's a lot of good content that comes out there, not only of what's going on in the connected communities that we are working with right now, but what's on the horizon, and of course, keeping up on broadband news in Texas. So those are some great resources for y'all as well. So this is the end of the presentation. I am more than happy to answer any questions. Unfortunately, I failed to change Stu's email at the bottom. That should say jbaker@connectednation.org. So it's my first initial and then my last name. I do apologize for that. I promise you I looked over this slide like 20 times to make sure I was ready to go. So I do apologize for that, but that is my email. We got another question from A.T. Wyatt. Let's go ahead and ask your question.
I just want to clarify, you want one person to fill out one survey per location. So when you're in a business that has lots of people, some of which live in the county and some of which doesn't live in the county, you should have like the main manager, whatever, fill out for the business. And you should have all the employees who live in Jones County fill out residential. Is that correct?
That's correct. So one location, well, okay, let me put it this way. A manager's responsibility might be different than a service line producer, using hypothetical titles. And so what I would say is that if they use two different things in those particular locations, then it's okay to fill out two different surveys because they're doing two different things. So for instance, at the county courthouse, Judge Spurgeon's survey as the county judge probably looks a little different than, say, the district clerk, the sheriff, the county tax assessor collector. And so at that location, because they are doing 4 different jobs, 4 different people doing 4 different jobs, they can fill out the survey because of that location. But if you have like your managerial team and they all kind of do the same thing, just sometimes for them to fill out business surveys.
Hey, Jamie, could you repeat that? Sorry, could you repeat that? You kind of broke up for a second.
I must have lagged. I apologize. So what I was saying is that if you have 4 different managers at your particular location and they do the same job just at different times, it's not necessary for them to fill out 4 different businesses under the survey. If you have 4 people at that location that does 3 or 4 different jobs, then that is probably an acceptable option for them to do a survey. To your final point about going home, regardless of whether or not they fill out their survey at the businesses, everyone in Jones County should fill it out residential. All right, we got Will over here with his hand raised. So if I can just have you unmute and ask your question, please share.
So we've got the survey and then we've got the end goal of broadband access to rural areas. So how do those meet? Is that the plan? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how this survey gets us to the access. How do we get there?
Sure. So this is step 1 of like a multi-layer process. And so in order to get to, the broadband deployment, which is going to be working with providers in your area, working on getting grant funding. To put it into perspective, to lay some fiber about a mile is probably around $30,000 to $40,000. And so if you have a provider laying that out, that can correlate to increased prices for those particular services to recoup their loss. So in order to subsidize that, we look to state and federal opportunities for grants in underserved or unserved areas. In order to get that money to deploy your broadband, you have to showcase a need and multiple different layers as to like what is the need in this area, where is the need on this area, and that's where the survey comes in. So the survey is collecting the data to showcase the need of the areas and why it's important for this area to get funding to help subsidize the deployment with the providers. We're not with the providers right now. Where we're at is finding out the accurate assessment of Jones County. So it is a multi-level step and process. And as we go forward, we're going to be addressing things with providers. We're going to be addressing things with state leaders and federal leaders, and in order to get the money in order to deploy the broadband.
So have y'all had success getting from survey to broadband?
So
Have you had success on that?
Yes. So what I will say is, especially in Texas, we are relatively new. Rains County was the first one, connected community that launched, and they launched in 2019. So, and again, and COVID has delayed a lot of this. Connected Nation, and I might defer to Wes about some of the other areas that has had more success than Texas. But what I will say is that as my time in the congressman's office, as we were producing with Rains County and setting up that level of success, we had meetings with USDA, we had meetings with the FCC, we had 2 different providers of Rains County, People's Communication and eText Communication coming in. And as we were working on getting the survey through to get the data, we were simultaneously working with our local and state and federal stakeholders and partners in order to showcase the need of Rains County so that they were eligible for reconnectivity grant programs to expand broadband. I'll give you an example. I flew to Washington, D.C. I had a meeting in the Secretary of the Agriculture's office, and they would say, well, we need providers in order to apply for these, these reconnectivity grants so that we can deploy the fiber. And my statement was, well, why don't you have what I would consider concrete connected areas apply for them, and then let them use their providers? And they're like, well, we can't do that, because if a business, they might be anchored in the community for 100 years, but they could get up and leave. And my response was, I'm not talking about these businesses. I'm talking about the county. If people apply for grants for this, and then they contract out under a 15 to 20 year provider status, so that that the grant is going for the use. Can we do that? USDA previously said they couldn't, but they did after that because of the way we worked with our stakeholders. So that's more of what we've done in Texas. And speaking on that, Wes, do you want to share from some other areas?
Sure. I mean, we've done work all over the country, but oftentimes, at the end of the day, what this process leads us to is giving us the information to, and many times just starts the conversation locally, brings everybody to the table and starts having a conversation around, if a provider has some roadblocks or some barriers in a community that they haven't been able to overcome, let's have that conversation. That's part of this process. Same thing, local leadership may have some sort of, long-standing issue of why they haven't worked with or haven't been able to work with a provider, or maybe it's zoning, or maybe it's rights of way, so on and so forth. This process brings to bear some of that, a lot of that information, and then what it doesn't bring out in the survey often comes out in these kinds of conversations, and bringing the community together to talk about what the issues are, and so it helps us quantify that. And then as we look at some of the new federal funding programs, having this type of data is going to be absolutely pertinent to a community's ability to act quickly, or a provider. So a provider who may want to serve the community to be able to act quickly, to have this kind of data available, won't have to be generated or created or gone without, and will certainly put the community in a position ahead of any of the communities that don't have this, and puts them in a much smaller grouping of communities, counties, regions, whatever it may be, who will be vying for potential federal dollars in the next 5 to 6 years, many of which may come directly to the community or to the state for distribution.
And Will, I'll just echo what Wes said. As a former policy staffer, especially in rural areas, I know that Congressman Arrington is y'all's member of Congress. He is a very, very active member of Congress. I have worked with his staff. In fact, his former legislative director was my legislative director in Congressman Ratcliffe's office. And we seek out opportunities to help our local communities, especially our rural communities, which is why programs like this, federal policymakers have wanted to partner with, because we want to, we want to help our areas. And so that is why this is one part of a cog, and the cog continues to work for the overall goals.
I just think there's got to be motivation to fill out the survey, and if they can't connect the dots, then they're not going to fill it out.
Absolutely.
So be able to communicate that is going to be important for us, because we have the email addresses. I mean, we'll be the ones that'll push, partner in pushing it out, and they're going to ask, well, why should I fill this out? And I need to be able to communicate that.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's why we're having these questions. If you come across someone who's like, or a particular sector that's like, I don't understand the dynamics, I don't understand how this gets to the end goal, please reach out to me. I am more than happy. Wes, I'm speaking for Wes, but I know Wes would be more than happy. All of us would be more than happy to jump on to explain that, because it's kind of funny if I get an email and it says, hey, take this survey for better broadband. My initial thought would be, why do you want my information? Why am I giving this out? I don't know you. I don't know this organization. I'm going to delete it, or I'm going to block you and put you in spam. And so that's why, the community leaders are so important, because people will trust your interaction more so than getting an email from me. But again, I am more than happy to explain the cycle, and especially explain the benefits that come down the line through the initial participation with the survey.
And last comment, I value that trust, and I don't want to just put my, I don't want to put my endorsement on something that I don't fully understand. So.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. Are there any other questions?
I have one on your survey. Are you going to be looking at mainly names and entities, different email addresses? How about, does the IP address with multiple surveys turned in, does that affect anything?
Sure. I'm going to defer to Wes. I can give you a simple answer, but I'm gonna let him go into the little bit more details of that.
So no, the IP address won't be viewed, and so typically what we try to do is make sure that we're not. We try to include everything that comes in that's possible to be included, and remove only those that are blatant duplications. And so what happens is you'll get somebody who starts one and then they stop, and then they come back in later on, or you see there's six of them coming in from one household, and they're essentially all the same responses. And so to the extent that we can include as much of that information as we can, we try to, but the deduplication process tries to cast a broad enough net that we're not getting rid of plausible responses.
All right. Is there any other questions?
Jamie, this is Dale Spurgeon. I just want to address a couple of things here. We do have a category of higher education, and we do have 2 members that have agreed to serve. They don't necessarily live in Jones County, but they're in Abilene, but they are associated with higher education. And so their benefit is they bring some expertise to the conversation about developing the action plan, but they also have an interest of what's going on in their neighboring county. So we really appreciate their willingness to serve. And as far as, this address question, example you used was the courthouse. We have different offices. We do have the same physical address, but we have room numbers. And so it will be, for a location like this, we have a physical address, but we're going to use room numbers to identify who's filling out the survey, because they use devices and the broadband differently. And in that survey that I have done, it does actually do a speed test. So when they fill out these surveys, there will be a process there to do a speed test. So whatever device you're using in that connection, that's part of that data gathering. So I think it's going to be very thorough and detailed information that you're going to be able to gather. So again, appreciate everything that y'all are doing.
Absolutely. Thank you, Judge. Any other questions? All right. Well,
Following along on what the judge just said about the higher education, Hamlin has gone to a collegiate campus, so their connectivity and what they would need, plus I assume every high school in the county, the kids can get dual credit, both college, and they probably have to go online. Will would know more about that than me. But yeah, there is higher education here coming through our high schools.
Yeah, we're partnered with Cisco Junior College, and our kids, they take online courses. So yeah, we do have higher ed in that sense, that we are partnered with Cisco.
Absolutely. And I don't want y'all to think that because the higher education sector has 0 on there that there is not a presence of higher education. Typically speaking, we look at that as a physical location of a junior college or a physical location of a like say Abilene Christian University. Pains me to say that as a Texas Longhorn, but hey, good for them, but locations like that, it's more physical locations. It's not necessarily the opportunity for them to do distance learning or for them to do dual credits. But having said that, if someone is involved in the higher education process and using internet connectivity in Jones County, we welcome them to fill out the survey. Just because it says 0 does not mean you cannot fill it out. All right, we got a hand raised from Caleb.
Well, you kind of answered my question, but yeah, so I'm with Hamlin Collegiate ISD, and we do really have a physical higher ed location. We have professors on our campuses here. We operate under Cisco and West Texas A&M, but we do physically have higher ed staff here and operate as a higher ed campus here.
Excellent. Well, we would welcome them to fill out the survey again. Like I said, even if it had, this goes back to the survey. We have, you have about 350 farms and agriculture entities here. We're only asking for 35, but if y'all get 50, more the merrier. So if y'all have more than 2 libraries, community organizations, please more. So I don't want anyone to think that we are discounting higher education. It was just more when we do the overview and we pull y'all's data on that. Some things we don't have information to, so it's great to know that, and it's great to learn that. And I just what I would encourage is anyone who participates from a higher education standpoint, please make sure to have them fill out the data. It only helps, it doesn't hurt. All right. Any other last minute questions, concerns?
Estelle Spurgeon again. On the invitation that I sent out for this meeting today, I included that fact sheet, the updated fact sheet that you referenced. Mm-hmm. But I think that if you can update it with a QR code, that does add an additional piece of information to connect people. And so we will send that out as well as soon as we get that updated fact sheet.
Excellent. We will get that for you. Okay. Well, hearing no more questions or anything, we will, I want to make sure to respect y'all's time, and we are somewhat on time. I did say it was going to be about maybe 45 minutes to an hour. We're a little over an hour. So I want to once again thank everyone for joining. Thank you to my colleagues for participating and making this a true collaborative effort with Jones County. We will certainly be in touch. If there's anything that I can do, please reach out to me. Contrary to what's on the PowerPoint right now, my email is jbaker, B-A-K-E-R, at connectednation.org. So feel free to shoot me an email or talk to the judge. He knows how to get a hold of me as well. And we will be in touch. And thank you so much for participating. And I wish y'all best of luck in your surveys. Everyone have a great day, and we will talk to everyone soon.